And of course, up next, we've got somebody that many of you know. His name is Don Ackerman. He has been a huge veterans advocate for our area and for the state of South Dakota, has done some wonderful things. Also, a Vietnam-era vet. So please help me in welcoming Don for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you will, think about these words. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Take your seats.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Don, very much for starting us off. I will be your MC tonight. My name is Spencer Gosh. I hail from the large town of Glenham, South Dakota. If you don't know where that is and you're driving on Highway 12 and accidentally sneeze at the wrong time, you're going to miss it. It's also one of those areas that we like to joke that whole second cousin thing is more of a suggestion than it is a law. So, very rural. I've served in the legislature now for 7 years, the better part of a decade. Many people I have served with, some that'll speak here tonight. And one in particular, the main event, Mr. John Hansen, I've had the pleasure to serve with for quite a few years. Not only in the terms of being in the House of Representatives, but I was once the Speaker of the House, and John Hansen was my Speaker pro tem. It was an absolute blessing to have somebody like that with me, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to step up here today in front of you guys and run for the governor of South Dakota. And we're going to talk more about him in a little bit, but first I want to talk to you about an individual by the name of Brett Kenzie. Brett hails from South Central South Dakota. He is a lifelong rancher. He's been involved in the game. And if anybody knows more about the political realm than him when it comes to agriculture, I'd be shocked to meet him. Brett has been the national president of RCAF, and again, a great advocate for what we do as farmers and ranchers. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Brett Kenzie.
All right, thank you, Spencer. I'd just like to start out by saying what a pleasure it is to be here with you guys tonight. This is really where it starts. It can't be overstated how important you are. Just that activism and that grassroots energy, and I think that once you plant that seed and you foster it, I think it grows and you want to tell other people about it. So you guys are the best kept secret. One of the things that I've learned with RCAF and my time in cattle industry, politics, and being national president is just how much respect everybody in America has for the citizens of South Dakota. It's a big deal. So I want you to give yourselves a hand. So yeah, I'm a fourth generation rancher. My brother and I ranch together near Gregory, South Dakota. Our mom works with us every day, and our children help when they're not chasing balls. But fourth generation rancher, what does that mean? That means that my great grandpa forewent selling what he and his family had built and buying a house on the lake and retiring comfortably. That means that my grandpa saw what my great-grandpa did and did it again. And that means that my dad did it, and that means that I did it. And with any luck, you know, my brother and I have 10 kids, 1 or 2 or 10 of them will come back because we love rural America. We love what it stands for. We love the community of it. And I think that that's part of what makes South Dakota so special. So I guess, you know, one of the things that I also wanted to talk about is leadership. I've been exposed. I was in the military too for 3 years, so I got exposed to leadership there. I got exposed to leadership in RCAF and other organizations too. And I guess that's what I appreciate so much about John and Carla is that they lead with what they're for. And I love their motto, faith, family, and freedom. You know, you look not so far back, and it would have been pretty provocative to talk about your faith. And I think that America is a better place now that we can lead with that and lead with some confidence with that's what we're for, right? The greatest document on earth in written word would be the Bible, and the second greatest document would be the American Constitution, which, no accident, is based upon the Bible. And so when I speak, I like to use some quotes from history, and people say, Brett, you only do that to make yourself sound smarter. And to that, I say, yeah. But really, it's because it's a nod to the generations of the past, because I'm a multi-generational rancher. You guys are multi-generational Americans. A lot of people that you have never met have sacrificed for you and for your future and for opportunities to be better for you and your children than it was for them. That's the American way. That's the American spirit. But the words, one night when I was eating supper with my family, and I've got a lot of kids, so it gets to be quite a discussion, I asked them, where do your rights come from? And they looked at me and said, oh, Dad, you know, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I said, where do your rights come from? They said, what rights? And I said, all your rights. Where do they come from? And so we had a little class. Again, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I probably talk about this too much, and it wasn't the Constitution that I'm referring to, but the Declaration of Independence. The people that looked big problems right in the eye and tore right into it. But they did think that King George he was owed the respect of a declaration of why these revolutionaries would do it. And the excerpt of the middle that I think is really powerful is that all men are created equal, right? We got to get past all this racism. I think we can put all of that to bed really soundly in the short future. All men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator, capital C, with certain inalienable rights. That means common sense, among those being life. So let's think about John and Carla's campaign here. Is life a big thing to John and Carla's campaign? It is. Front and center. That's what the life meant. It seems so simple, and really, I guess it is so simple. But that's what they're talking about. People have a right to their life, right to life. Liberty. Marty Overweg, wherever he is, he's the guy that taught me what liberty means. I never knew there was a difference. Liberty is freedom with responsibility. What a wonderful way to look at it, right? And that's why I love you people being here. There's nowhere I'd rather be than with people who care enough to show up and to try and to learn, okay? Liberty, freedom with responsibility. You guys have taken it upon yourselves. You know, a government of, by, and for the people requires the people to show up. So thank you again for coming. And the pursuit of happiness, which is property rights. And boy, oh boy, has that been a huge deal. Again, so simple that a man or a woman, a citizen should be able to keep some of what they earn. And that really is what's going to unite the grassroots of Eastern and Western South Dakota, is this battle over property rights and the things that we have learned in those battles, and that's what's so exciting. That's what I hear from people from Ohio, Florida, Texas, state after state. They're looking to South Dakota, and they're seeing the leadership in South Dakota, and they're seeing the grassroots. And so the last thing that I want to say, and one of the things that I appreciate about John and Carla, and one of the things that you have to trust your leaders with, is that the government can affect you in two primary ways. Number one, through action, and number two, through inaction. And that again sounds simple, but it's pretty profound, because when you, and I don't want to make a big deal out of the mods, but that's the biggest news I've had in my circle here for a long time. But that was a government action that was wrong. And somebody needed to step in and take action to fix it. So you have action and inaction. And what I like about John and Carla is that I think that they don't worry about necessarily whose job it's going to be. If they see something that needs done, I think that they're going to do everything necessary and possible that they can do to get that done. And most importantly, they'll do it with the guidance of conservative principles, because that's what we have to get back to. That's what I'm about. I don't know if I'm D or R or something in between, but I'm definitely a conservative Christian conservative. I said that twice. That's that important, right? So with that, I just want to say that I'm really proud to endorse John and Carla, and I'm really thankful and humbled to be here, and I wish them all the best. And I just would say, the last thing I would say is look to your right and left. They have accepted the challenge of this campaign, but it's going to be our job to get behind it and talk to our neighbors and not keep it a secret. So with that, thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenzie. We're now going to move on to a lady that I'm going to embarrass a little bit here. Another individual that I've served a lot with over the years, and somebody who I've really looked up to as a mentor. This will be the nicest thing I've ever said about you, by the way, Liz. But I've always looked up to her as a mentor, and she's always been able to crack the whip, if you will. And she is a no-nonsense gal. She will not, I don't know if I've ever seen a lie come out of her mouth. And she will cut it to you straight. And she's about to do that to you guys right now. But before she gets up here, I want to tell a quick story. Now, a long time ago, in a very different body shape ago, I tried rodeo bullfighting. It was one of the quickest careers I've ever had. I was injured in the first week. One time as the Speaker of the House, I stood up there with a gavel. I've never had a problem speaking in front of people. That never bothered me. But one time as the Speaker of the House, Liz May got a little out of control, and somebody was ready to point of order her, and I had to gavel her down and say, please keep it to the subject. That was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. With that being said, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Liz May to this podium.
Thank you, former speaker, for that warm invitation to the podium to tell stories on you. Oh, maybe we're not here for that. I just want to start by saying thank you all so much for showing up. You know, when I got into the legislature, and I'm not even going to say how many years ago because honestly I can't even remember. I was beat once, and so, but I've been there a long time. And the first session that I was there was 6 of us between both chambers. So you think about that. So we have 70 in the House and 34 over in the Senate. So it was like, it was a really hard to move good conservative legislation. And I was trying to look to see some of the legislators maybe that were here at that time, and I can't get my eye on anybody. But anyway, needless to say, we just didn't have much luck. And so as the years went on, the sessions went on, we kept picking up a few more, and we got Representative Gosh in, and Representative Hansen, and Representative Mullally, and Representative Randall, and we started kind of picking up. Representative Phil Jensen at the time was the only legislator that was ahead of me in years as far as serving there. So we started getting a little bit of encouragement through that. But the first 2 weeks that I was there, I leaned over to my seatmate, who was Brock Greenfield at the time. He is the PUC chairman now. And I said to him, I said, Brock, I've got to go home. I got a lot of work to do. You guys don't get anything done here. And this is a waste of time. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm one of those people, you got a job, you go get it done, and then you go home. And so the word kind of got around a little bit that, May's leaving. She's done with this. And there was a big old Marine that came up. He was about 6'6". I had not met him. I knew he sat up in the front. And he wasn't liked very well, especially by the speaker at the time. They did a lot of back and forth. And anyway, he leaned down to me. I was in my desk, and he leaned down and he said, Representative May, you need to suck it up. I said, well, okay, I guess I can do it for a couple more weeks. Anyway, so I've been there a number of years since that time. Okay, let me talk to you about trust. In the legislature and in life, there's something that you're always seeking and looking for, and that's who you can trust, right? And when John and Carla approached me, I had been serving with them and knew them and had been in battles with them on a lot of conservative issues. And I'm here to tell you I mean, I trust others in the legislature, but as far as taking on this role, and this very important role, there's not two people that I don't trust more than John and Carla. They are true. They are true to their word. You might not always agree. I'm not saying, I tell people I've been married to my husband 43 years, and him and I don't agree all the time. So, you know, but on the core issues, the conservative issues that we're trying to move our state in, that direction, we have to have that kind of leadership, and it has to be at the top. We not only need the top, but we need the chambers underneath, and which we have the chambers now, and we're going to keep working at that. So it's who stands tall, who stands tough, who's got the spine of steel that's going to be able to stand there and take the beating, because it is a beating sometimes. And that's who they are. I've worked with them on issues that have been very controversial. Neither one of them ever sway away from it. They stay true to it. They take the criticism, they take it on the chin, and they keep coming back for more, and they smile while they're doing it. Something that I don't do all the time. And Carla, I've just got to talk a little bit about Carla. When Carla came in, of course I hurried and introduced myself, and then we moved along, and I didn't get to know her very well. I don't want her stature to sway you to think that she's small and not strong. She's one of the strongest women that I've ever had the pleasure to serve with. And I would stand beside her every day of the week and twice on Sunday in a fist fight. She means that much to me. John's the same way. They're just solid friends and colleagues, and it's been such a pleasure for me to serve in the House with both of them. No matter how much longer I stay, I will always have the memories of serving with these great patriots, and that's what they are, is patriots. So I'm going to leave you with this. Who do you trust? You've got to ask yourself that. Who do you trust to lead you, to help lead you, to help lead our state in a direction that, like Brett was talking about, a state that was built on grit and loyalty. And I personally do not put myself out and say things like this about especially politicians. I'm very cautious. So for me to be here, for me to drive across the river and go East River, which I never do, it was very important. This is very important. And we have to have all of you, this is grassroots. You can't buy grassroots. I don't care how much money everybody has. Money isn't going to buy this election. Yes, we need a little money. But it's the people that will make this election different. And so I trust John and Carla, and I want you to trust John and Carla. And I want you to do everything you can to help us carry West River and get the message out. Now, I wish I knew a cheer. I wasn't a cheerleader in school, but let's go. Let's get this going. Let's get fired up. Let's get the message out. Make sure that you join all their social media, share it, donate if you can, and thank you all so much for being here. You scary guy.
Liz knows that I don't do hugs. I almost hugged her there just for the cameras. Our next speaker is, she's been mentioned a few times, and a very important speaker. But I want to talk to you about what I've witnessed about Carla Lims. I was out of the legislature for 2 years, and I was enjoying life. The calves were tagged on time. The crop was put in on time. It was nice, well, in time to the best of my ability, but it was kind of nice being normal again. And in that time, being out of the legislature, I only had a few people call me for advice on certain issues and certain things. And one of them was Carla Lims. This is somebody I had not really met before then. So for her to be calling and trying to get as much advice about a situation to be out there really told me something about her. Look, we're not going to sit here and pretend that we have all the answers. But getting to know you guys will help us with that situation and being educated in that issue where a phone call would suffice. And she is that go-getter. Anytime an issue has come up with Carla Lims, there's no, well, that's too bad. There's no, oh, that's going to be tough. It's always, what do we got to do? Where do we got to be? How are we going to do it? Every single time. I've never seen her shy away from a fight. And she's not kidding. Now, one of the most recent trends on the internet is, can 100 people, 100 men take on a gorilla? Have you guys seen that thing? Oh, some of the kids back there are laughing, but that's the question today in our society is, can 100 men take on a gorilla? I don't know that answer, but if Liz May and Carla Lims were in the arena, my money's not on the gorilla, all right? That being said, I would like to introduce you all to the current Speaker Pro Tem and the future Lieutenant Governor of the state of South Dakota, Ms. Carla Lims.
Wow, what a pleasure it is to be with all of you tonight. And I do thank you so much for coming out. I know there's a lot going on around this area. You've got branding going on. You've got a nice day today. You've got hiking. You know, it's a Friday night. So I do really thank all of you for coming out. Also, all of you who have helped us put together a great event for tonight, I thank you as well. And if we have any members of the press here, I thank you for coming as well. So, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about my upbringing. So I was brought up on a farm, and I learned how to work pretty hard. We had a business on our farm. We sold a lot of ag equipment and bins and things like that. And honestly, I have the scars to prove it. And one little story that I didn't even have in my notes that I'm going to share is when I was 2 years old, I went out to the barn to see the new baby calf. Well, guess what? That mama cow did not appreciate me very much, and at 2 years old, the cow kicked me, I broke my leg, and Dr. Vandemark back in Sioux Falls said that I was the smallest patient that he ever had on crutches. So that's kind of my claim to fame right there. So anyway, but in fact, on the farm, we often had to improvise or think outside of the box. So it gave me a great foundation upon which to build of what I'm doing today. And I literally do roll up my sleeves, as you can see here, to show that I'm ready to get to work. Not just because of my small stature, because, you know, it's just a gesture that we use to say we're ready to go. I got married young, and I have a great family. In fact, my husband Galen is sitting right here if you want to wave to everyone. The rest of my family, yeah, thank you. And I have 3 children. I have a daughter at home named Laura. She has special needs. We have a coffee shop in Canton, South Dakota. If you guys ever want to visit, we'd love to have you. And that's named after her. And Jay is my son. He works with us in our family business. His wife Hannah owns a salon suite in Harrisburg. And my daughter Kaylin lives in Sioux Falls with her husband Jake. They have 3 little kids, and then my son and his wife have 1 daughter as well. So this is part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's because for my family and for yours, for future generations, we have a lot of work left to do. And, you know, our country, it seems like we're going somewhat in the right direction now. But that is really why I got into politics. It was about the year 2020. How many of you kind of woke up in 2020? That's, you know, I had been involved in county politics for a number of years. And I really enjoyed that. But it was about that time that I started to see the cracks in the armor more on the national level. Politicians would say one thing, and then they would get to Washington, D.C. and do the opposite. And you could see only the remnants, it seemed like, of what it really meant to be an American. You could sense, I could sense, that the train was about to come off the tracks. State government I found out, was much the same, but it was much more camouflaged at the time. So before I got to Pier, there was an opening in my district, and my husband and I had decided it was time for me to jump into that arena. And I remember seeing John Hansen, who I had never met before, at an event, an evening event. And it was at the end of that night, I looked over at the edge of the room. He looked tired, and he was sitting over there, and I introduced myself and sat down next to him. He answered my probing questions that I had about what it was really like fighting in the trenches. And it wasn't the rosy picture that I had imagined it to be. It was apparent that we needed more patriots in Pier, ones that would stand for our God-given rights, our Constitution, and our way of life. So I ran for office to hopefully bring another voice to this fight. So I got elected. That was 4 years ago I got elected. I've served for the last 3 years. But after arriving in Pier, I saw that indeed the red carpet was rolled out for the special interests. But the people were often ignored or often looked at with disdain. And that was not at all how I thought it would be. And I know that some of you in this room have been in the fight much longer than I have, and I appreciate your service and for you paving the way for somebody like me to come on alongside. Sorry, I feel like I have something on my lip. But for the last 3 years, John Hansen and myself have worked together alongside some of you to change the landscape in Pier. And so far, I think that we've done a pretty good job. One of the pivotal moments after my first year that I was in Pier, what came in a little town called Leola, South Dakota. How many of you have heard of Leola and what's happened up there? Okay. So I heard this story about what was happening up there, and we began to listen to the people with the boots on the ground. We actually went to them, and we heard their concerns, and we responded. We fellowshipped with them. We felt the heartbeat of what was going on, and we saw the blood, sweat, and tears of what was going into that battle. And it actually became a template of what was to come. And when all of that was happening, when I first heard about it, I actually called John. Now you have to remember that John at that time was in the middle of the battle with Amendment G, the fight for life, and again, the fight against getting abortion cemented into our Constitution. So he was in a great battle over there. But I called him and I said, would you like to go on a road trip and see what's going on in Leola? And he responded with a frequent John phrase. And some of you have heard him say this before. He said to me, let's go. And the rest is history. So why John Hansen? Why John Hansen for governor? There's other people running for governor. Because he stands for the things that I believe in. And I have seen him lead, even when it gets rough. And if you can stand in the midst of the storm and still do what is right, true, and just, you will have my vote, and you will have my support, and I will stand next to you in that fight. So the people of South Dakota have a choice to make. They can choose the status quo, or they can choose a better way forward. And I have seen that courage begets courage. We do not always know the timing, but we are promised that at some point the truth will prevail. And even now, other states are beginning to look at South Dakota. We are paving the way, and we are leading on many of these issues. South Dakota is winning, and I would like to tell you how winning is defined. It is defined by remembering the foundation that was laid by those that came before us, reestablishing ourselves upon it, and moving ahead together, because in South Dakota, under God, the people rule, and with John Hansen as the next governor of the state of South Dakota, we will lead the way. So, with that, would you please help me welcome the next governor of the state of South Dakota, Speaker John Hansen.
Hey, thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate you coming out. Thank you to Larry. And at his ranch, he's a Reinhold. And I said, well, my grandma's a Reinhold. And it turns out that Larry's grandfather and my great-grandfather were brothers. We just met today. Yeah. You know what we call that? South Dakota. That's what we call that. So that was pretty cool. So hey, cousin, nice to see you here. Thanks for coming out. Isn't it always good to be in a room full of patriotic, freedom-loving South Dakotans? I think it is. We're gathered together tonight for a very important purpose, and that is to give our state government back to we the people. We the people. I think the people of this state deserve a government that puts families first again, not special interests and corporate lobbyists. A government that doesn't tax people out of their homes and off their land through skyrocketing property taxes. A government that actually believes in freedom and the free market, not crony corporate welfare that's paid for by your tax dollars. A government that's defined by transparency and accountability and excellence, and where the corruption and the scandals that you hear about in the news over and over again, there's one that just came out in the news over the last 24 hours, those scandals are ended. And of course, a government that doesn't sell you out to out-of-state companies to perpetrate Green New Deal scams. But just right, South Dakota deserves a government again that is of the people and by the people and for the people. But all too often, what we've seen in South Dakota, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here because I recognize a lot of faces who have been to Pierre and have experienced the people, the great people of our state are having to go to Pierre and fight and beg and plead to just get their government to do the right thing. Well, I'm here to tell you that those days are coming to an end. It's the people's time now. It's your time. It's time for tested, trusted, faithful, proven, conservative, grassroots leadership in our executive branch, and that's why I'm here tonight to announce to you all that I'm running to be the next governor of the great state of South Dakota. Thank you. I don't come from money or politics or entitlement. I am of the people, and I have been down in the dirt of this state fighting for the people. Where I do come from is the small town of Del Rapids, South Dakota. Anybody know Del Rapids? Oh, of course, yeah, we love Del Rapids. Town of about just under 4,000 people. We live just south of town. If we lived in town, the town would be over 4,000 people. I live in town with my wife Sheila, or on our land with Sheila. We have 6 kids. Our oldest is 13 and our youngest is 1.5. Sheila sends her love and regrets for not being able to come out tonight. She was going to come out with Sam, our 1.5-year-old, but Lily, our oldest daughter, was up coughing all night last night, and so she had to stay home with Lily, so she sends her regrets. Sheila and I met in high school. We were high school sweethearts, as they say, and she was a town, I was a town kid, she was a farm girl, and as we were dating in high school, if there was one place that I knew that Sheila would be after school, it was the family milking barn. And so I learned how to milk cows so I could hang out with Sheila. And I think I might hold the South Dakota record for the most cows milked by a town kid. That's how much time we spent out there. I think. I'm pretty sure about that. If there's three things that Sheila and I love, it's small towns, big families, and Almighty God. That's who we are. You know, our state motto is under God the people rule. But that's not just a slogan. It's our way of life. It's who we are and it's who we're supposed to be. But we have seen in South Dakota our way of life come under attack in ways that I've never seen before. But we've seen it over and over and over again in Pierre. Under God, the people rule. But we've seen the people's interests take a back seat to special interests. And attacks on our South Dakota way of life are often ignored by the people who are entrusted to protect it. We've seen bureaucrats in Pierre that hand out millions of dollars in corporate welfare payments while you suffer under the burden of high property taxes. And we've seen shady deals with big political donors that cost the people of the state hundreds of millions of dollars in wasteful spending. Out-of-state interests continue to come to South Dakota and try to amend our Constitution with extreme leftist policies. And, of course, we've seen out-of-state companies, foreign-backed companies, emboldened by lobbyists and politicians to come to South Dakota and try to take our land for Green New Deal scams. Oh, but the tide is turning, isn't it? Grassroots patriots from all across the state are standing up, and they're standing up in record numbers, and they're saying, no more corruption, no more waste and abuse, no more attacks on our land and our liberties and our South Dakota way of life. And this campaign renews the coming of the end for all of that. Absolutely. You know, I've been in this fight alongside many great, God-loving, freedom-loving, conservative grassroots patriots, many of whom are in this room, and together, united with a common purpose, we have taken on some of the biggest political giants on the biggest of political issues, and we have won. We have won, and we are continuing to win. We have fought the good fight on eminent domain and ended eminent domain for the Green New Deal carbon sequestration pipeline. And together with my dear friend, who some of you might know, Leslie Unruh, I formed an organization called the Life Defense Fund. And through the Life Defense Fund and our leadership in that organization, we did what many people said was impossible. And in spite of the polls and the politicians and the political talking heads who said it couldn't be done, we fought the good fight and we defeated the abortion amendment, Constitutional Amendment G. Praise God for that victory. Praise God for that victory. Life is saved in South Dakota, and that is just so good. During COVID, I'm looking back at my friend Scott Odenbach. Boy, did we have some fights on the COVID front. We fought for your liberties. We stood up against government shutdown and crazy vaccine mandates. We are ending woke and restoring common sense in South Dakota again. Boys must use boys' bathrooms and girls must use girls' bathrooms. You know, you wouldn't think that would need a bill in South Dakota, but it actually took a couple of bills because the first one got vetoed. But we persisted, we brought it back, and now that's the law of the land. We also banned a hospital in South Dakota from doing cross-sex hormone transgender procedures on minor children. That was taking place in South Dakota, if you can believe it. But we banned that, and of course, we fought hard and we defended girls' sports. Very good. We are securing our elections and protecting our Constitution from these big money, out-of-state leftist influence. I've passed laws to expand education choice through tax credit scholarship programs. We're cracking down on government corruption and bringing about more accountability in our state government. The bottom line is we are battle tested. We've been in on this fight, and we are ready on day one of this administration to restore Pierre to we the people. That's the goal. So as your governor, we will build an even stronger South Dakota where we put you and your family first again. Here's one thing's for sure. As your governor, we will never just sit by and allow our farmers and ranchers to be steamrolled by an out-of-state, foreign-backed Green New Deal company ever again. That's done. We will end the excessive strain of property taxes in South Dakota, but you know, we don't want to start by just shifting from one tax to another. We actually need to cut and reduce the size of government. That needs to be the first priority. And so to do that, on day one of the administration, absolutely, thank you, Scott, our fiscal hawk back in the back. To do that, to cut South Dakota budgets and reduce the size of government on day one, we will create our own South Dakota Doge. We will have real government transparency and accountability in our government again, and anybody in the bureaucracy who is not committed to accountability and transparency and excellence for you, the people of this state, they will have no place in our administration. You know, families in this state deserve the best education possible for our kids. Education excellence should be the standard. And whether that's in a public school or a non-public school or a homeschool, families deserve the freedom to choose the best education option that works for them. And in our public schools, when our administrators fail our students and don't live up to their mission, we will hold administrators accountable for failing our students. That has to happen. You know, parents are the primary educators of their kids, and so we want to provide them with the resources and the teachers who teach them with the resources to provide an education that will create upstanding, moral, and intelligent kids. And to advance education freedom in South Dakota, on day one of our administration, we will create education choice grants. That has to happen. Families deserve the freedom to choose the education option that works best for their kid. You know, speaking of kids, South Dakota produces the best food known to man. Our producers produce the best food known to man. But before that food hits our kids' lunch trays, it's mixed in with a bunch of petroleum-based food dyes from places like China. Why are we doing that? We're poisoning our kids. That's not going to happen anymore. South Dakota is going to join the front lines of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Absolutely. We will ban artificial petroleum-based food dyes from our school lunches. Did you know that your taxpayer money has been funding transgender procedures? It's true. In our prisons, your taxpayer money funds transgender cross-sex hormones in our prisons. Did you also know that our state institutionalizes woke by amending official state documents with trans sex designations? By executive order, we will define man and woman, and we will end woke and restore common sense once and for all. And we will always have the backs of our farmers and ranchers, and we will support our family farms and ranches and find new markets, new pathways to consumers, and new ways to help family farms pass down to the next generation. That's so meaningful. It means so much to our farmers. And we will become the Green New Deal graveyard in South Dakota. And the only thing that gets sequestered in our state are the leftist policies that seek to control our land and control our people. And most importantly, you will have a governor that you can trust to fight for you. Someone who knows how to get the job on day one. Someone where you don't have to go anymore and fight and beg and plead your governor to just do the right thing and defend our rights and our values. Carla Lims and I, we will lead with the truth. We will lead with conservative values. And with trust in God, South Dakota will lead the way. You know, the grassroots movement in this state, we've talked a lot about it tonight. It's thriving for one main reason, because we stand united. It's because we have each other's backs. And in that same spirit, as you know now, joining me on this ticket is our Speaker Pro Tempore of the South Dakota House of Representatives, Carla Lims. Carla, I like to say she has a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. She will not compromise on our values. She is a grassroots warrior. She is someone who has proven herself to be someone who can carry the torch on the biggest issues of the day for the people. So please join me in thanking our next Lieutenant Governor, Carla Lims. And so now that we got Carla back up here, we're going to take some questions. And so are there any questions from anybody in the crowd? Oh, we got some. I think some were submitted to Spencer. And so Spencer, go ahead and kick us off with some of these questions.
I suppose we'll use the microphone here. And then I'll let you guys take over. First question, what are your plans to lower property taxes for us middle-class South Dakotans?
Well, that's a great question, and it's on a lot of people's mind. I think property taxes is probably one of the biggest issues that we face right now as a state, and I think there's a couple of reasons why. Well, first of all, we've seen skyrocketing valuations in the state lead to skyrocketing property tax bills, and I'm opposed to these property taxes for a couple of reasons. Number one, because as you've experienced, property taxes are taxing you on unrealized gains, something that we wouldn't do in other areas, but we do that through property taxes. But I think even more fundamentally, property taxes, at the end of the day, never really allow you to own your own land. It's somebody could spend 30 years of hard work and finally pay off that last mortgage payment, and once they've done that, they still owe this, what seems like a rent check to the government. And if you don't pay that rent check, then the government's going to come knocking at your door and potentially pay your property. It's a bad system. It's a system that's been instituted across the country, and we've gotten used to it over time, but let's face it, it's not a good system. So in the short term, what we'd like to do, we've created a task force. That task force membership is going to be announced next week. And that task force, as I mentioned earlier, is going to start out by looking at how can we cut the government. You know, there's been some proposals about shifting property taxes from one tax to another tax, and let's face it, if you really want to abolish all property taxes, it's so much money that you would have to shift from one tax to another tax. But before we do that, I think we should look at how we can actually cut the state government. And so that's what we're going to do in this task force. We're going to look at ways we can cut the state government, reduce the size of government. Of course, property taxes fund local effort, counties, etc. But the state does pay a share of the education funding at the local level. And so if we cut the state budget, we can shift more of the burden to the state through that savings and then save you on your property taxes. And so I think that's the place to start. I think if we execute on this plan, we can just begin by cutting property taxes by 30 to 35%. That'll be a starting point. It'll provide significant relief to families. But that's only the beginning. I think we need to finish the job and actually reduce entirely and eliminate property taxes and switch to a new system, because I think the system of property taxes is antiquated and it needs to go away.
Thank you so much. Is this on? Mr. John, Mr. Hansen, it's not on. Sorry, it went off. Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Thank you so much for explaining your platform. It's so exciting. As a COVID refugee from Virginia who moved here 3 years ago with my husband and my 2 boys, it's very refreshing to see true conservatives ready to get in the fight and defend our values.
We love our blue state refugees.
Yeah, thank you. We've learned we love South Dakota, so we're happy to be here. We feel very welcome. Wanted to ask a follow-up question on a slightly different subject that you mentioned, which was food dyes. I know it's getting a lot of publicity in the media, and just can you talk a little bit more about what they're doing as a mom of 2 growing boys? You know, it's easy to grab random foods and, you know, snacks and stuff, junk food, and it's full of this stuff, I realize, and it's a constant battle in our home. So what can you tell us about that and what you'll do?
Well, we're seeing on the national level, RFK Jr. really leading the way on the Make America Healthy Again movement, and I think it's opening a lot of people's eyes. You know, what we're used to doing every day by consuming some of the foods that we've consuming, but then we realize, wait a second, these are petroleum-based products that are coming to America from places just next door to Wuhan, China. And I don't know of a lot of great things that have come out of Wuhan, China lately. And these food dyes are included. And so we really, I think it's a good opportunity for our state to join that effort, because these petroleum-based, I mean, they're literally petroleum-based food dyes that we're putting into our foods. And if you ask some others out there, they'll say, boy, I can actually tell when my kid has consumed a lot of these products with food dyes. It affects behavior, and we don't even know the long-term health consequences of these. And so we're gonna join the effort, and we're gonna do things to protect our kids to start with from unnecessary ingredients in our food. And so we're going to start with our high school and elementary lunch programs and eliminate these food dyes, and we're going to try to do everything that we can do to join the effort to make America and South Dakota healthy again.
We have another question here.
All right.
What is your name and your baby's name? She's adorable.
I'm Kim Trask, and this is Genevieve and Samuel, and the 2 others are out there in the hallway, so they're not quite as rambunctious. So I appreciate the dye discussion and the Make America Healthy Again. Can you talk a little bit about alternative dye options that may be more natural based, and if that might be beneficial for South Dakota?
Sure, yeah. Well, there are plant-based alternatives from carrots or beets, etc. And, you know, with the country shifting towards those dyes, it might open up new markets for our producers in South Dakota to start producing some of those things. And so I think it's an opportunity for agriculture states too to shift from those sorts of dyes to plant-based healthy alternatives. So I think it's just a great opportunity all around for the state of South Dakota. Yeah.
All right, they just went ahead and handed them to me, so I'm going to ask you a couple other questions.
Okay,
where do you stand on election integrity in South Dakota, and do you support hand counting of ballots like in our municipal and school board elections? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Well, I am an advocate of election integrity. We've passed some bills, and I've worked with some election integrity real champions from across the state to try to bring about more integrity to our election system. Of course, we all saw after the 2020 election how important that is for our country and our state. And I've been on the record as expressing some real hesitations about some of our voting machines that we're using in the state of South Dakota. I don't know if you realize this, but these voting machines, we don't even know how the software is programmed. It's proprietary, and the companies won't show us how it works. Moreover, if you want to gain access to things like cast vote records, which help us to audit the election, you actually have to pay this company that's based in Illinois, by the way. You actually have to pay the company more money to get that information. So I'm not comfortable with a system where we farm our counting of our ballots out to third-party, out-of-state companies. I think that's a bad idea. And so I think we need to look at, you know, there was a bill that came before the legislature. I'm looking back at Scott again. Boy, we've been in a lot of battles together. There was a bill that came before the legislature that would have prevented people from submitting petitions to have their counties do hand counting. I support those people's efforts to do that, to try that at the county level. And there was a bill at the last second of legislative session that would have said the counties can reject those petitions. We stood up and fought hard, and we killed that bill. And so I'm going to continue to do everything that I can do to make sure that election integrity advocates in this state are supported, that we have secure and auditable, fully auditable elections in this state, so we know that our elections are strong and secure and fair for the people.
All right, I have one more question that someone wrote. Are you willing to do checks and balances, such as restoring integrity of the courts by allowing cameras in the courtroom? Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, that actually is, cameras in the courtroom is a whole nother topic, but I will say this. I think our system of checks and balances in South Dakota is actually way out of whack right now, and I think there's too much power in the executive branch. And you know that if you've ever looked at, say, the budgeting process of our state government. We can't even, as a legislative branch, sometimes it's difficult to even see down into the budget and get the details that we need to be able to see. And so, having been in the legislature, having come from the legislature, one thing that I would like to do is restore some of that balance back to the state legislature. I actually think that's really important. We have a great citizen legislature in this state. And I think it's appropriate that the citizen legislature, especially on the budget, has more of a say. It's our legislature that is supposed to be holding the purse strings. It's supposed to be the legislature that's ultimately producing the budget. And so I plan on working with the legislative branch to make sure that we do that we restore a better balance of checks and balances, because right now it's just, frankly, it's just out of whack. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, I work at the Black Hills Pregnancy Center, so appreciate all your efforts. So, we saved babies in South Dakota. I'm a social worker and I run my programs. So now what? Because we're getting inundated with phone calls from women who are very desperate because the culture has told them that they should abort, and now it's illegal. So how do we now change the culture to support the babies we've now saved?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, sometimes there's government solutions to things and sometimes there's not. And sometimes it's just a cultural solution. And so I think the best, rightest answer to that question is all of us, the people of this state, good Christian people of this state, need to step up and be there for those mothers and those fathers when they really need it. We're all pro-life. And so we need to not just say that we're pro-life, but live that we're pro-life. And so if there's somebody that you know that's in that situation, that needs help, that needs guidance, that needs support, first of all, our pregnancy help centers in the state are amazing. They're incredible. As I mentioned Leslie Under's name earlier, she runs the Pregnancy Help Center in Sioux Falls. It's called the Alpha Center. And I oftentimes visit there, and they do incredible, incredible work for particularly young women in the state who are in these crisis pregnancy situations. And oftentimes I walk away from there, and it's easy to forget what's going on every day at our pregnancy help centers, where they're living a Christian life, a Christian example, being there for these women and these fathers as they're in these situations. And so if you know somebody who's in that situation, number one, I would say, please do contact one of our pregnancy help centers. They are amazing people that can provide so many resources, but also let's just all commit to being there for these young mothers and fathers and helping any way that we can, embracing them, and also just living a life of strong, healthy families. I think one of the best things that we can do in this state as a culture is just be a model of what it looks like to be a healthy family, and the joy and the fulfillment that that brings when you're a healthy family, and to have young parents see that and then desire that because they see the joy and the fulfillment that comes in those situations, that's nothing that a bill can do. That's something that we do as South Dakotans, as good Christian people. So let's do that.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that. I could be commenting on all of these, and John's giving such great answers. I would just comment, and I'm not as familiar with your Pregnancy Help Center, but I'm sure it probably mirrors some of the things that we see in Sioux Falls. And I was so impressed by watching what they do at the Alpha Center. This is not just having an ultrasound and getting somebody to go through with the pregnancy. This is the follow through. This is training. This is, do you know how to budget money? They have programs for that. They have programs for dads to say, how do you be a good father? How do you be a husband? They have programs, you know, for single moms to know how do you manage time? You know, these are things that so many of these young people that are having a child that was not expected, that they don't have some of these life skills. And those are the things that I see that they have been bringing to the table for some of these young people that are just so key to them being successful when they choose to either keep their child or, you know, possibly just seeing them through the adoption process. So if there's any way that we can come together as, you know, it's so many things that I see, it's like, where is the church? Where is the church? And we need to stand up with the churches, getting, you know, encouraging our churches and our pastors and our fellow lay people to get involved in these efforts with life, because it's life, liberty, and property, or life, liberty, and, well, pursuit of happiness, right? It used to be pursuit of our property. But all of those things go hand in hand, but number one is life. It's what God has given us, and it's a reflection of who He is. So that's all I had to add. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Got one over here. I'll bring the mic to you.
You know, this past spring, the governor, he vetoed HB 1169. Would you have signed that?
That's the geographical distribution requirement bill?
Correct. Amendment G would have never made it to on the ballot if the Senate as well as the representatives get this passed.
Yes.
This needs to be passed in the state of South Dakota.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. I definitely would have signed that bill. And just to, for anybody who's not familiar with that bill, you know, when people go out and petition to put something on the ballot, what happens in practicality is that they go and they stand mostly at the county admin steps in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then maybe out in Rapid City, and then maybe sometimes in Aberdeen. But if you ask people in the rural part of the state of South Dakota, they've probably never seen a petition circulated. They have no say in what goes on their ballot. They don't get a choice. They get to November, and here's a bunch of leftist policies that just thrust right onto their ballot. And so I actually worked with Representative May back in the day to write the bill that she eventually carried. That there was this bill. It was the first time it was introduced. I authored that bill. It failed then. We got it back introduced this year. It was introduced, and then it passed the legislature, and it got vetoed by the governor. So what this bill would do is to set up a geographical distribution requirement. And so you can't just pay people a bunch of money to be in Sioux Falls and in Rapid City. Instead, you actually have to go out and talk to people in the rural areas and get their buy-in too about what comes onto their ballot. I think that's a great bill. I think it's a necessary bill. If you look at the states where they do have the petition, the initiative and referendum process, half of them have a geographical distribution requirement that this bill would have required. So they have something like it. And so I agree with you. I think it's really important that we do that, and we're going to continue to make sure that it gets done.
John, it's not so much a question as it is maybe, I don't know if all these folks know about the what did you call it, lost property funding? And you talked about, that's just sitting out there that we can't use, but you have a unclaimed property. Thank you.
Yeah.
And, but I don't know if these people, I didn't know about it until just this last year. So I don't know if you'd want to explain that to these folks as to an idea, because that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. So if you're not familiar with unclaimed property, what happens with unclaimed property, and the reason why we have so much of it in South Dakota is because we have national banks that are chartered in the state of South Dakota. And so if there's unclaimed property, that is property like, let's say you got a refund on your credit card or something like that. It just sat there and you didn't use it, and after a certain amount of time, they actually have to turn that over to the state. So then the state gets that money, and what's been happening in the past is that money just gets thrown out the door, on this special project or that special project or this pet project or whatever. Well, shout out to Senator Taffy Howard. Senator Howard has been working for a very long time to create a trust fund. And so rather than just throwing that money out the door, we as a people can actually put that money into a savings account and then use the interest to fund some of our necessary government programs rather than having to tax you more to do those things. And so that was a measure that we passed just this last legislative session to start setting up that task force, and I think it's a big win, and I give a big shout out to Senator Howard for getting that done.
No problem.
Thank you both for being here. John, I really appreciate, Speaker, what you had mentioned about the terrible divide between, not divide, but discrepancy between the authority of the executive branch and the legislative branch. Having served not as a legislator, but as a spouse, I've seen that over and over and over again. So I appreciate what you said about the budget. But what are some other ways that you could see restoring the authority to the legislature?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of things where, well, here's an example. I mean, here's one that just comes to mind because it's something I was just talking about with some folks just a minute ago. But right now, you look at the game fish and parks, for instance, and with the game fish and parks, the administration controls all of the money that's controlled by the game fish and parks. That doesn't, like other agencies, it doesn't come into the general budget that we can then, we have a say on how we expend that money. And so that's an example of where, maybe we ought to put the game fish and parks money through the general appropriations bill and fund that just like we do every other branch of government. We've also seen some bad deals like the South Dakota One Stop, for instance. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's one here and there's one in Sioux Falls. And the one in Sioux Falls, for instance, it's an office complex. Okay, so the state wanted to take, the administration wanted to take all of the state agencies kind of in the Sioux Falls area and put them all under one roof. Okay, well that's not a bad idea from the outset, but what the state went ahead and did without any legislative oversight or approval was they contracted for a lease, and the lease is a 30-year lease for $300 million. 30-year lease, $300 million. After the 30 years, all we get is to go beg for another lease renewal. Now, contrast to that to another building that's currently for sale in Sioux Falls. It's the old Citibank building. I think it's more square footage. It's in good shape. That's a $34 million building. And so that should have never happened. That's called a bad deal for taxpayers. And so we already passed a law to make sure that the legislature will have oversight of those things going forward. But I think the legislature, when you get into those things, it's appropriate that the legislature has more oversight over leases like that too. Because otherwise, things like this happen. The executive branch has entered into some really bad deals, and we want to make sure that stuff like that does not happen again in South Dakota.
You got one?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Hunt, and I live at Dupree, South Dakota. I'm kind of a minority here because I'm a tribal member of my tribe, and we live on an Indian reservation. And my daughter, who's a legislator in the state legislature, I've told her, you can go down there and fight against the green new energy and our rotten judicial system. And, you know, we don't believe in abortion, all these things. But it really doesn't have a lot of effect to the way we have to live and what we're under the jurisdiction of the federal government as tribal members and living there. And so I guess my question is, you know, Christine Ohm was banned from our reservation and several other reservations. There's not a good relationship between tribal governments and the state government. What, have you thought about that issue, or what can you do to make life better for the Indian people and people that are under the jurisdiction of the federal government that's so woke and so liberal because of the Democrats that have been in power? You know, do you have any comments on that issue? What can you do to make our life better and the people that we have to convince to vote for you back home? I guess that's my question.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I have a question for you, and it's, I want to know how to raise good kids. Because I know Jana, and I know your parenting skills, and you must be doing some things right. So I appreciate that. I'm always on the lookout for good parenting tips. I think that issue is something that's it's incredibly important. I mean, you look at some of our reservations in South Dakota, and it's some of the poorest counties in the entire United States of America. And, you know, a lot of that does stem from federal policies over the years. And as a state, I mean, I come at it from certainly a point of humility, not actually having all the answers, but having an open heart to go to our brothers and sisters on the Native American reservations and just reopen that dialogue and that conversation and really talk about solutions. What can we do as a state? I mean, I would come at it from a servant's perspective to the tribes and just say, what can we do for you? I mean, I recognize the problems that you recognize. I think it's really serious, and I definitely have a heart for turning the cultural and economic situations around and the crime that happens. And, you know, I go and visit the women's prison on occasion. I did that especially, you know, as I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee for all those years. And you see a lot of Native women in our women's prison, and it's just heartbreaking. Because you think about all of the situations and the brokenness that has led to that being the case, and then the recidivism, because, you know, there's not really in many cases, a strong foundation to return to. And so, you know, I'm not one to go to the tribes and preach about what I think they need to do, but I will approach the tribes with an open heart to say, what can we do together to help fix this situation? Hello, Tina.
Hello, John. Hi, Carla. Representative Tina Mullally out of District 35. With the announcement of the two of you, Speaker Pro Tem and Speaker of the House, if you are elected, you're going to leave a huge hole for the rest of us that are going to have to serve. And we know behind the scenes, your, I guess, establishment ones are already working toward to find someone to fill your position and find someone to fill her position. That scares me because I have been under 3 conservative leaderships and one not so friendly. So I'm a little concerned that we're losing both our speaker and our speaker pro tem for the 2026-27 session. And that's going to hurt a lot of us in getting legislation across because we like to keep the second floor at the second floor. Stay out of the third floor, okay?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. From my perspective, I'm actually termed out, so it's the end of the legislative line for me in the House anyway. But one thing that I've always taking good care of in my district, and I know Carla does too, is just to be good stewards of our district and try to make sure that, you know, this is a lasting thing for conservative values and the things that we hold dear. And so I've been already speaking with a number of people who are ready and willing to step up and take over my seat. I know Carla has done the same thing. And so I think we're going to have, you know, not to brag on my district too much, but we've got a great conservative district in District 25. Okay. Thank you, yeah. It's my former district mate over here, Randy Gross. And so, you know, we're going to make sure that we fill those seats with good conservatives and do what we've done in the past, and also go out and recruit other great conservatives from across the state to make sure that we have a legislature that actually represents the people and not corporate special interests.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and cut this off the moment because we want an opportunity for you guys to get a chance to talk to them and realize what we already know, that they are an absolute normal South Dakotan and great people. Okay, so again, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you guys for stepping up in a big way for conservative South Dakota and for the grassroots. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.